Hello, I'm Susan Patricelli-Regan, your host for Connecticut Valley Views, and my guest today is the infamous Lee Elci. He is the host of the Lee Elci Show on 94.9 on Monday through Friday from 6 to 10 a.m. Welcome, Lee, and a quick question. You went on a walkabout recently. You somehow or other, you were without your car and you walked to work.
Well, kind of. Yeah. So thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. I saw all of the past esteemed guests that you have on. So I'm humbled by the idea that you would ask me to come on your show. So thank you very much for that. I appreciate it very much.
I'm delighted to do so.
So I was up like my normal day, which starts about 3 o'clock in the morning because we got the morning show. So I went out, and I live at the bottom of a very steep, tall driveway. It's about 350 feet long, and sometimes when it gets icy, I have trouble getting up the driveway, and it happened to be very icy.
Sure.
And even though my truck has four-wheel drive, I couldn't get out of the driveway. So I was throwing sand down, doing a million different things.
Right.
Nothing. This is 3 o'clock in the morning now too.
Sure.
So I'm going all over the place, blah blah blah, and finally I give up. I say I can't get out of the driveway, and my wife is sound asleep again, so I don't want to wake her up. So I just throw my backpack over my shoulder and I start walking to work, which is about 20 miles away.
Oh my God!
What I was gonna do, and I did, is I called one of my coworkers who I also know does the morning show, because in the building that we broadcast out of, there are 5 shows going on at the same time. So I said, listen, Sean, come pick me up, will you? I'm walking to work. So he came and got me. So I was going to get there one way or another.
So how many miles did you actually walk? A couple of miles?
About 3.5.
3.5. All right, you got your exercise.
Yeah, I got my exercise for the day. Sure.
Yeah. Well, now your Full Power radio station, it's located in New London, Connecticut. How far does it actually reach? I mean, what kind of listening audience territory do you have?
The terrestrial signal is really strong. So the tower for the radio station is actually in Long Island. And what they do with this tower is they angle it at the state of Connecticut, and radio signals carry very well over water. So we pretty much have everything from, just let's say south of Providence, all the way down. You can get us some days in Bridgeport, crystal clear. Right. And pretty much up and around Hartford. So we get I would say we get a good 3/4 of the state, but radio is changing. So every day, technology keeps improving, and you can actually, everyone listens now on the app. They listen on their phone.
Yeah. You've got a very broad audience. You get more callers every day.
Yeah. But you don't need a strong signal anymore to attract listeners, because people can listen on their phones. You can, like I said, you could be in a parking garage in Stanford and get us clear as a bell.
Right. Yeah. Well, what our viewers want to see is, will the real Lee Elci stand up? So you call yourself the voice of freedom. When did you start using that reference, and what does it really stand for? I mean, we can guess. You
trademark.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
When did I start using it? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
That's all right. When did you start using it? Is this recent? A few years ago?
No, we started using that about 5 years ago. But the last couple of years, I tried to promote it more. In fact, in the last couple of years, I did trademark it, so it's part of me. So we kind of pushing that forward, and I think it's got a neat little ring to it, and the people seem to have identified with it pretty well. And it's just the idea that, we get on the air every single day and we try to promote freedom. I mean, isn't that the most important thing?
Sure. Well, one of the things that I know, that when I listen to you, you feel no sense of retribution. I mean, you pretty much are yourself. You're pretty candid. Yes. You're comfortable in that role, are you not?
Yes. I don't have anything really to hide from anybody. I tell stories about my personal life. I tell stories like, if I go to a doctor's, I tell that story. If my car breaks down, I tell that story, because a lot of times, yes, politics and news and, who's who and Democrats versus Republicans, everybody wants to hear that, but also everybody wants to know, hey, did he like that movie, or did he watch that show, or whatever. So radio has this amazing ability to be very personable, and it's very one-on-one. And I try to do that every single day. So I really, I just let it all hang out. In fact, I always think of my listeners as my psychiatrist.
What I note is that when I listen to other radio stations, they're very careful. They let people on, they let them talk, they let them ramble and so forth. But if you don't like someone, you just cut them off, and which is fine. I mean, it's your show.
Well, I don't really know if I cut people off. I have a core set of, we got a lot of callers, but we also have a lot of callers who call there's a certain amount of callers who call every single day. And usually those guys and gals are, they become almost like, part of the show. So you give them a little extra leeway to kind of do what they want to do. So yeah, no, I try to let everybody have their 5 minutes or 15 minutes.
The other thing I noticed too is that you give your guests a lot of time to talk. Right. And sometimes I know that other hosts, they jump in, they want to make sure they get their 2 cents, or they want to refer to something that, in their past that identifies with the caller. And you actually let people talk at some length. And I think that's a great attribute, because when you do so, you're actually being hospitable to the guest who wants to get their message across, whether it's important or whether it's just an everyday caller who wants to kind of spout off or rant or whatever it is. But you're always very courteous to it, and that's an admirable feature when you're an interviewer.
Well, I appreciate that. I do try to do that, and it's simple. I have plenty of time to be me, right? So if you're on my show and we block out a certain amount of time, I can kind of do my own thing in my own time. I'm there sort of to facilitate a conversation. Like you're on the show with me, every other week now. And so, if you have something you want to say, I'm going to give you the opportunity to say it. Now, there may be some times when I would disagree with something that somebody says, and I'll push back. But for the most part, it's almost like you've, blocked out some time, and we're just having a talk, and it's sort of like your world, and I'm just a part of it for that little while.
Right. Now, when the subjects that you pick, the guests that you have, do you choose them according to what seems to be the most critical subject matter of the day? How do you go about picking your guests? Or do they sometimes ask if they can be on, or set a time or whatever? How does it work?
So for me, I have a core set of regular guests. I have, off the top of my head, I think it's maybe 15 guests that come on every certain day, every week. So somebody, 8 o'clock on Monday, 2 o'clock, 8 o'clock on Tuesday, whatever. So there's a core that are on. No matter what the topics are, those guys and gals come on. As far as anybody else, unless it's a national sort of person or somebody who's really in a newsworthy situation, like someone fighting against the union or teacher or something that happened in school or something, I always kind of stand back and let people reach out to me. I never ask a politician to come on, never. I haven't done that in the longest time. So if you hear a politician on my show, they've reached out to me. And the only reason why I do it that way is because I don't want to be accused of being, have a favoritism towards anybody. That goes for Democrats too. I mean, if you're a Democrat and you call me up and you want airtime, you're going to get it.
Yes.
So yeah, that's how I handle it. I mostly let people call me, except for my core regulars. Then they just come on.
Yes. I feel that's very important to do that. I have on the show we're doing right now, Connecticut Valley Views, I have had people very broad, diversified across the aisle. Obviously, a lot of politics, and doctors, lawyers, business leaders, many administration people. Obviously, they've been Democratic, different departments, done also, domestic violence. I try and cover a lot of things. The show is about informing people, and that's what I feel your show's about, is informing people to the best of your ability. And I think that you, amongst many media people, try very hard to get the facts and not so much your opinion. And the media has become a very focused on commentary and their opinion. And that's why we've got I listen to the conservative stations. I watch the liberal shows. And that's divided the country, don't you think?
I think you're right on the money. I think social media, your Facebooks, your Twitters have played a major role in that division. And I don't know how to get that back on track. I
Mhm.
can only say be nicer to each other in certain cases. See, I welcome when somebody calls my show who happens to have a different point of view. I welcome that. I mean, there was a time when I had more Democrats or more liberals as regular guests on my show than conservatives because it made the conversation more
Yes,
interesting.
yes.
And what happens is over the period of over the period of years, some of those folks have fallen by the wayside. Some of them are no longer in politics. Some of them didn't see the use in their lives to come on the show. It was
Mhm.
only a negative for them, right?
Yeah.
So they would get on the show with me. We'd have a dialogue, and they really didn't get anything out of it. So over I've been doing this for a long time. It's sort of now almost 50-50 now. People will say, well, you have all conservative guests or you have all Republicans. It's
Right.
not true.
Yeah.
I really have, if I went down the list, it's probably a 50-50 split. Now I have more Republican politicians on
Mhm.
because the Democrat politicians rarely come on. There are a few that do, and I give them credit. I mean,
Mhm.
Kathy Austin comes on all the time. She'll reach out to me. Dela Cruz will reach out to me. Rep. Dela Cruz will reach out to me. Even Needleman will reach out to me from time to time. And that Lamont's been on half a dozen times or so until I started writing columns about Lamont and they stopped coming on. So I kind of
No
cut my own
surprise
throat.
there. Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
So,
Well, let's talk a little bit more about your earlier career. You were a minor league baseball player. Is that
I
correct?
was. Yeah,
Give
it
us
was.
give us some insight into that period of your
I'd have to say it's probably my favorite time of my life was chasing the baseball around those green diamonds. I still consider myself a baseball player. I think if I were to die tomorrow, and I hope I don't,
spread your ashes on the field or what?
Yeah, well, I think that if I have a headstone, I think it's going to be baseball players. Still what really is inside.
What position did you play? Actually, what position?
Well, a couple different. I mean, I was mostly a catcher and played outfield after a while in minor leagues. I signed as a catcher, but from the first time I swung a bat at 7-8 years old, that's all I ever wanted to do. So my whole early adulthood, all childhood, and then into teens, I was so uber focused on baseball. In fact, to the point where if I look back, I missed out on a lot of stuff, right? I missed out I was always kind of just so driven to be a baseball player. And when my friends were doing their thing and other people were doing their thing, I was all in for baseball. And I'm not sad about that. I'm glad that I did that.
Sure.
And it got me pretty far, got me a college scholarship, it got me a professional baseball.
Oh yeah,
career,
that's a fantastic. What do you think about the athletes these days now that get recognition and now they're getting some of the profits? Collegiate players. You think that's good?
Yeah, I got to admit I do. I thought for the longest time that these kids deserve to get paid. I know people say, well, the education is their payment, but when the universities are making, hundreds of millions of dollars in some cases, and the kids are, barely. Listen, when I played, if you were on a full scholarship, you couldn't get a job. You couldn't get a part-time job because you couldn't exceed a certain amount of income. Right. So it just really handcuffs these kids. And, when you look at how much time an athlete in college has to make money, right? Like, not every one of these kids is going to be a professional athlete, right? So why not let them take those 4 years that they're playing a Division I or Division II college sport and make money? Maybe they can make it, $40,000-$50,000 extra dollars and put it in their pocket and use it for something, a down payment on a house. I don't see any negative in it at all.
Yeah, well, they're sharing the profits. I mean, let's face it. I mean, these guys are making money off them. They're like a stable full of horses for them, and these guys have got their opportunity. Now, you also did, if I have this correctly, did you do a stint on TV or a soap opera or something?
I did.
Okay, so, tell us about that interesting part.
All right, you want the short story, long story? I mean, how much?
Well, we got a few minutes. Right. Tell us the long story.
No, I mean, when I was done with baseball, and I kind of saw the handwriting on the wall, and my career was over. Here I was a puppy with no home. I didn't. What was I supposed to do? I had nowhere to go. I didn't yet know I wanted to do radio. So I met a friend of mine who was an actor in New York, and they were on a soap opera. And they said, you should come take an acting class, and see if you like it. Mm-hmm. I said, come on, why would I want to do that? That's not me. But they convinced me, and I went down to New York, and I sat in an acting class, and I'm sitting there. I'm 28 years old. I'm in, good shape, whatever. And I look around the room, and I'm sitting in a room with 15 beautiful women. I'm like, why wouldn't I want to do this, right? So I decided to start taking classes, and for the next year and a half, I took multiple classes a week. I traveled back and forth to New York. I worked part-time on the radio, and I did a lot of black box theater, like that's off Broadway stuff.
Okay.
And I ended up landing a recurring role on As the World Turns, which
that's been around for a long time. Sure.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. Well, I was a bartender in this bar they called Yo's.
Okay.
And every time they used that bar, they would call me. Sometimes I would get speaking roles. Sometimes I would just stand there polishing the dishes. But I did that for about a year and a half. But I really wasn't making.
Did it pay well? I mean, was that a good
when you have dialogue, it pays well, right? If you have 4 or 5 lines, it pays great. If you don't have any lines, it's like $100. So it was tough, and I was struggling. I was struggling.
And then how often? What do they do? They tape once a week, or?
No, they tape 4
every
days.
Day?
4 days a week. Yeah, you would go.
Okay.
Yeah, you'd have to get there like at 5 o'clock in the morning, and the first shoot would be like around 7. Everyone would have their hair and makeup stuff, and then depending upon if you're in the afternoon shoot or a morning shoot. But it was a couple times, 4 times a week. I think they shot, but they call me 4 or 5 times a month. And listen, I actually fell in love with acting too. I really love it. I did. It
builds confidence, doesn't it?
Oh my God. But you get to be, this different character and all these different roles. And I must say, like I said, I do consider myself a baseball player, but I think, I have a real attachment to the world of acting. I could easily have been drawn into that. If I had a little bit more early success, I think I could have went that route for sure.
All right. So now you are or were or have been a disc jockey. So how did you circle around to the radio media thing? How did that come about?
Okay. So again, I'm in New York now. I'm sleeping on my cousin's couch, who's a tremendous actress in her own right. So I'm sleeping on her couch 3 nights a week. I'm driving home to work part-time in radio 3 nights a week. And I'm just struggling. I'm knocking on doors. I'm getting the no. You walk. What's funny is what people don't understand. Acting has this, when you go on these casting calls, you walk into a room and you look around and there's 40 people that look just like you. Right? It's kind of like, they look
tall,
like you.
handsome, whatever. Yeah.
Well, no, depending on whatever role you're going for, they're all going for the same thing. So, you're trying to figure out how can I catch somebody's eye. But anyway, so I was doing that, and like I said, it was gave you some humility too, because you get turned away a lot more than they say yes. But I got a phone call from a friend of mine who's been in local radio for the longest time, and he says, "Listen, I got a job for you if you want it, but it's full time. You got to take it full time. It's on the radio," which at that point in time, I'd never gotten a radio gig full time because for a bunch of different reasons. But he says, "Listen, I want you to do the afternoons on a brand new radio station in the Mohegan Sun Casino.
Oh, okay.
And your job would be you introduce or you interview acts and you do all that, and how."
Yeah.
And so it was appealing to me getting us. I was 32 years old and never really got a full-time paycheck. I was always, helter skelter and scattered. So I said yes, with the stipulation that if a big role came up, they let me go and try out for it. Right. So that afternoon show almost immediately turned into a morning show because the morning show guy quit like a week into his career there. So I ended up taking the morning show at this rock radio station, which still exists in the Mohegan Sun.
Okay.
So I did that for 4 or 5 years, but it was a little boring because we had fun, but I'm listening to the music most of the time.
Yeah. It becomes habitual, and you know it too well.
Yeah.
No challenge.
So then, so an opening opened up in the same company they were trying a brand new talk radio station, and I jumped at that, and here I am all these years later. I switched companies. I was with this other company for a few years, and then I went to Full Power Radio because the signal was stronger and the whole idea was better. But so that's kind of how I got from there to there.
Well, tell us about. I know you have great affinity with animals. You were talking for quite a while there. I think it was a wolf that was outside your window at your home.
It was a coyote.
A coyote. Okay, coyote. Yeah. Is that still happening? Is that coyote around?
I haven't seen it's funny. I'm looking right out there to see if he's out there now.
Yeah.
So, it's weird. When I lost my last dog, Bailey, it was 11 years ago, almost immediately, stumbling into my backyard came this injured deer, right?
Yeah.
So she had a broken leg, and it was heartbreaking.
Yes.
So I started feeding her, right? And so I've always had an affinity for animals. I've always loved dogs, cats, whatever. But
right.
What's weird about the coyote situation is as soon as my last dog died, Ozzy, which was 3 months ago, like the next day, this injured animal pops up in my backyard. I'm
yeah,
like,
isn't it funny, the fate of life?
Yeah, so I know I'm not supposed to say this or do it, but I started feeding the coyote, and he kept coming back. But I haven't seen him in probably 3-4 weeks. My guess is, it probably didn't work out. It's hard for them to survive if they're injured like that. So.
Yeah, we've had some bitter cold, and if they don't find enough to eat, they don't. Well, you and I share that same thing. I love creatures.
I would rather spend the day with my dog than anybody. I think. I hate to say that, but that's just the way I am.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about, you have a very beautiful wife, Christine. Is that correct?
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, very lovely lady. How did you meet her? How long have you been married?
We've been married for 17 years.
Wow, great. Congratulations.
I know. We actually got married late. So if you look at how old I am, we actually didn't get married till I was 38, almost 39 years old. So we actually knew each other from the time we were 14, mm-hmm. where she was following her and her sister, believe it or not, were following around this Babe Ruth, which is a 14 to 15-year-old baseball all-star team that I was on. Not to follow me, but just because they're, one of those things. Anyway, I've known her for that long. And, later on in life, I saw her out one night and we started talking. And the next thing you know, we've been married now for 17 years. So and it's funny, I always had a crush on her. Yeah. I was always afraid of girls growing up.
Why is that? Is it the Too Beautiful a Girl, the Ice Maiden? What was it?
I think maybe
you were a great baseball player.
Oh, that's nice. I don't know. Maybe it's just the rejection, the fear of being rejected at that time. And when I got into my mid-20s, late 20s, that sort of kind of went away. Mm-hmm. But when I was young, if a pretty girl looked at me, I was like,
yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, so now, having had this 17 years of experience, people always talk about what makes a good marriage. What's your opinion on that? Is it being friends first? Is it common interests? Is it actually being opposite to many things? What do you think contributes to a good marriage?
God, it's such a great question. The truth is, me and my wife are opposites in almost every way. She is really not a sports fan. She's not political at all. She works in healthcare. I think it's just, you find time for to be with each other and do things that you both like. But at the same time, I'm very much of a person who's comfortable being by myself. So I don't need someone in my shadow all the time. And she's actually the same way. So that's actually a good thing. So we don't have
I agree.
That neediness.
Neediness is the right word. There are a lot of people that really require that, and that becomes very tiring. And
right.
Yeah,
but whenever we're doing something together, we have a good time. But we also have a great time when we're probably doing things on our own. It's like she does her own interests and I do mine, and I think it's a good thing. And, when we don't have. And because we don't have any kids, because we got married, like I said, a little bit on the late side. So, whenever we have an animal in our lives, that becomes our kid. So it really, it's weird how our world completely changes and sort of goes in around that. So
sure. Well, it's interesting to get that aspect. Now, you said she's in healthcare.
Yes.
What kind of what is her?
She's a physical therapist.
Physical therapist. Okay.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of need for that, not only for the elderly, but for people in general. People are suffering so much from the stress of this COVID thing, and life in general. That kind of support, which is natural, not taking medicine, is really the best kind. It really is. It's a healthier way to go. Have you're always interviewing politicians. Have you ever thought of running for something yourself?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
It's funny. I don't want to let too many trade secrets out. So I really, really, really was considering throwing the hat into the ring against Blumenthal this time. Now, yeah, I mean, I've been asked by some folks, and I've had the preliminary meetings, but I really think it's funny. I'll share the secret on the air with you, since you're so nice to have me on.
Sure.
I feel like there's one more great run in me at something.
Yeah.
Right. So I feel like I did the baseball thing, I did the acting thing, I've done the radio thing. I don't want to give up the radio thing, but I feel like I have something more to offer folks.
Sure.
So I did think about that, and what happened was, unfortunately, and I keep going back to my sort of personal sadness, is that my dog died like 4 months ago, and I had to make a decision, like really right around that time, and I just wasn't mentally into it. And plus, I've never done it before. Like I don't even know where to begin. It's somebody who talks to politicians every day. I wouldn't know where to begin, how to do that. Yeah. And this is a huge undertaking, and I understand that.
Yeah.
But
well,
what's that?
I think sometimes it's just you get into it, and if you're a fast tracker and you hit the ground running, you can find that the people who have been in that particular arena for a long time, you find out that you're a lot smarter than they are, and you actually end up being better at what they're doing than they are. They just have a practice trade. And so let me just say to this, for your viewers, if they want to sign up, listen to you on a regular basis, they get the app, right? They can listen to you daily, Monday through Friday, 6 to 10 a.m. Yeah. And any kind of information you'd like to give to be able to get hold of you, or your website or your email address.
Well, I would love it if some of the people from that side of the state could listen in, because you get a chance to hear all kinds of different folks, politicians, and we do that every day. We also try to have some fun, but you can go to my website, which is leelci.com, and that's sort of in the works, but we've been toying with that for a while. And on my Facebook page, you can like that, and we can have some fun there as well.
Well, it's been great spending time with you, Lee, and I will definitely be listening to you every day. And I want to remind everyone, our viewers, that you can see all of our programs on ctvalleyviews.com. This is Susan Patricelli Regan. Thank you for joining us today. And please be sure to see all of our shows. And I am so grateful to have Lee on today as my guest. Thank you very much.